Hello everyone, this is Bobby Blanchard and I am the Texas Tribune social media editor. If you are watching, you are joining us live on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, maybe even our website, where the Senate committee is set to consider SB 3, which is a bill that would give Texas teachers a base pay raise of $5,000. It would be $5,000 this year and the following year, so it would be $10,000 in total, I believe. We're going to be streaming this hearing in the morning, at least through 12 o'clock. If they go later, we might stop it. We might keep it going. Kind of depends on a couple of different other news things. But if you are watching and you have questions, leave them in the comments of this video, and I will answer them. I see a question about whether or not this includes retired teachers. I don't believe so. That could be wrong, but I think this is just for current teachers that are looking. Let me see if I can go check that though. Nope. I see this is just about current teachers, not retired ones. I'm seeing lots of questions about retired teachers. I'm sure that's something that will be discussed today. If not, we will look into doing follow-up coverage on that. I'm also going to leave a link in the comments to a call out. We are looking to talk to teachers about their pay raises or about those salaries and whether or not a $5,000 annual raise would be enough or would be helpful. Leave that in the comments right now. If you are a Texas teacher and you want to talk to us, please respond to this call out that I'm leaving in the comments on Facebook. And that's going to do it for me for now. I'm going to go away. We will be live. I'll still be watching, but you won't see my face. You won't hear my voice. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye for now.
righty, Mr. Chairman. Senate Finance Committee will come to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Nelson.
Here.
Senator Hinojosa.
Present.
Senator Bittencourt. Senator Birdwell.
Present.
Senator Campbell. Senator Flores. Senator Hancock. Senator Huffman. Senator Colkhorst. Senator Nichols.
Here.
Senator Perry.
Here.
Senator Taylor. Senator Watson. Senator West. Senator Whitmire. A quorum is present.
A quorum is established. Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. Love the sea of red. Today we're going to take up Senate Bill 3 on teacher pay, which has been designated a priority for the Senate, the House, and our governor, who placed this issue on the emergency call. I want to say this to everyone out there who might be present wanting to testify on this bill. In the hallway, there are kiosks. If you just want to register a position, you can go and use the kiosk and sign up. If you want to provide oral testimony to the committee today, there are witness cards. We would ask you to fill out a witness card in its entirety, please. And if you have written testimony, we need 40 copies of it with your name on it. We are also going to ask you to limit your testimony so that everyone has an opportunity to testify. There's a light here. When it goes off, if it turns red, you need to finish your sentence and we'll move on to the next person. Any questions, members, before we get started? Good morning. I'm going to hand over the gavel to our Vice Chair, Senator Hinojosa, and ask to be recognized on Senate Bill 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
At this time, the Chair will recognize Madam Chair Nelson to lay out Senate Bill 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, the goal of Senate Bill 3 is to provide a well-deserved, across-the-board, permanent $5,000 pay raise for every classroom teacher in Texas. Specifically, that breaks the rules. I love your enthusiasm. Specifically, this bill establishes a new classroom teacher salary allotment. It directs that each classroom teacher is entitled to a $5,000 salary increase above their 2018-19 school year salary. It specifies that the raise is paid for by the state, and it clarifies that this bill does not preclude districts from offering merit raises or anything else that they want to do. Mr. Chairman, I do have a committee substitute that I'd like to send up and not adopt, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You recognize to lay out the committee substitute?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 3 clarifies that districts may not use these dollars to supplant current salaries. This is above current salary. We need to clarify that. And it directs that the state cover cost increases associated with the teacher retirement system as a result of this pay raise. And Senator Huffman and I have discussed this. We want to be sure that our teacher retirement system issues are covered financially as well. Members, it has been 10 years since our teachers have received a pay raise from the state, and 20 since a significant pay raise. Meanwhile, healthcare costs are going up. Teachers are dipping into their personal funds to pay for classroom items. We need to provide this salary in order to retain our teachers in our classrooms and to attract new teachers into the profession. There is no more important profession to our future. And we've got to make sure that we attract the best and the brightest and keep them. And salary's a component of that. Now, nobody goes into teaching thinking they're going to get rich. But I understand, the committee understands the rising costs that teachers are facing, and it's time. We have set aside in Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 1, for those who may not know, is our budget. Embedded into Senate Bill 1 is $3.7 billion that covers these raises. The most important investment we can make is in our teachers. They're the key factor in preparing our students for success. Before we hear from our invited witness and our public, Mr. Chairman, I have one amendment to the committee substitute. Do we have that ready? It's being prepared. We do have it.
No, that's the rules.
We don't have it. It's being prepared.
Well,
And let me just, I'll explain it to you, and it'll be before us. I won't ask anybody until you have time to ask questions. It was brought to our attention just this morning that charter schools are defined in a different section of the amendment code, and we need to be sure that this same bill applies to our charter school teachers. And so we've got an amendment that will clarify that our charter school teachers get this raise as well. So I'm not going to ask anybody to do anything with the amendment until you have a chance to see it and ask questions. That is the bill. It's a simple bill, but it will do more to help, I think, our teachers with their morale, with their health care costs, and their bulletin board supplies, all their bills.
Their bills.
So that, Mr. Chairman and members, is what the bill does.
okay, are there any questions? Senator West?
Madam Chair, I, along with, I think all of the members of the Senate are co-authors of this bill.
Well, I know everybody's sitting here. It is.
Okay. Two questions.
Yes.
Mrs. Great, in terms of what will and if you don't know off the top of your head, we can probably get someone, what will the average, assuming this bill passes, what will the average starting salary be for teachers?
Well, Senator, will vary depending on the school district.
Sure, that's
And I don't have, the commissioner's presenting today, and he's got a great visual he's going to present to give us specifics on that.
Okay, and secondly, I know we have the money this session, and you know that many of the superintendents and school districts will ask the question, what happens when we don't have this money? How do we make certain that these teachers know that the state is going to live up to this obligation?
A couple things. First of all,
We're not passing it on to the school district.
yeah, as long as I'm sitting in the Senate, our teachers are going to be a priority. And I won't even say if, Senator, when we have an economic downturn. We've been around long enough, things ebb and flow. It's all about priorities. And Senate Bill 1 has this embedded in it as a priority, and I would hope that every future legislature would do the same thing. If times get tough, you've got to make choices, and I would suggest that there are going to be some bridges that can't get built that session. But this should be one of the very last things that we would look at not needing to do. So I can't promise for every future legislature, but I will say this, they're going to have to undo it. If this passes, it will be an established fund, and if somebody's going to change it, they're going to have to go back and revoke what we're doing here today.
The other question is this: is this bill dependent upon the passage of the property tax bill?
No. Thank you for asking that question.
I thought it was a very good question.
Yes. No. No. They're separate issues. I mean, teachers pay property taxes too, and I'm sure they want to have something done as well. But it is not linked in any way to whatever we do with property tax. We need to do this no matter what we do. No matter what we do with, the question also has come up, Senator, about the commission on you serve on it, Larry Taylor. They have done remarkable work and have some really good recommendations. This does not preclude us from doing any of that. I'm just saying, before we do anything else, this is the first bill, other than our budget, this committee has heard. And before we do anything else, we need to tell our teachers, we're going to give you a pay raise.
Okay, my last question is this, and yes, I did serve with, I'm serving with and will work with Chairman Taylor on the commission recommendations. One of those recommendations was to make certain we have teachers that were making six figures. Six figures, you heard that, okay? And so this also is independent of that too, and performance pay. And so this 5,000 is on top of that also, is that correct?
Well, I would suggest that that would be on top of this 5,000, but yes.
On top of this 5,000?
Yeah.
Okay, so teachers, so when we begin to look at what we're attempting to do for teachers, we're attempting to give every teacher in the state at least a $5,000 raise.
Yes.
And then there's incentive money, correct me if I'm wrong, in the soon-to-be-filed education bill to make certain that teachers that go to the hardest schools, most challenging schools, will be able to get incentive pay to turn those students around and make sure that they get the quality education everyone else. And those teachers could make up to $100,000. Is that correct? Okay, I just wanted to ask those questions.
Thank you.
And maybe before I call the next member, we now have the committee substitute, Madam Chair, in the event to...
Yeah, I got it.
read it out. This one you explained.
Yes, boy, everybody's got a copy for me. Yes, I would send up the committee amendment to the committee substitute members. Do you all have a copy? And basically, it states that this will apply to classroom teachers in open enrollment charter schools as well. We did not mean to not say that they would get this money too. We want everyone to get it, but this just makes sure that that happens.
Okay, is there any objection to the adoption of committee amendment number 1? The chair hears none, it's so adopted. At this time, I'll call on Senator Watson.
Thank you, and Madam Chair, thank you very much for bringing this bill to us, and I'll reiterate what Senator West has said. I think every member of the Finance Committee has signed on as a co-author of this bill. I have a couple of questions that relate to making sure that it achieves the goal, as you laid it out, of being permanent. And you indicated that it was tied to the 2018-2019 base district salary schedule.
Right.
And so I don't know the best way to approach this, but if I look at, starting at line 17, B1, it talks about the monthly salary the teacher would have received for the 2019-2020 school year under the district salary schedule for the 2018-19 school year. And the way I read that, that's where it ties it down and sets a floor. But on the next page, page 2, line 3, it says that that subsection expires September 1 of 2020. So the floor expires. And what concerns me, and I think that there's a potential unintended consequence if we're not clear. And so that's what
I think I know where you're going with this.
if you go back above to the salary allotment, there's nothing that ties that down once it expires.
Yeah.
And it's not tied to any year. It just says under the district's salary schedule on line 16. So what could happen is a district could drop the salary under their salary schedule by the 5,000 or more, and then it could be used as funding, but it doesn't guarantee it as a $5,000 pay increase.
Without this language.
Without tying it down.
Right.
But when B2 goes into effect, and the subsection B1 expires September 1 of 2020, then there's no floor that has been set in the bill, the way I'm reading it. And so what I would suggest is at an appropriate time,
Committee substitute addresses what you're talking about.
well, I'm not sure it does. I think that's what I was looking at. The committee substitute just says it's at line 15 and 16 that it's in addition to the regular salary to which a teacher is otherwise entitled under the district salary schedule, but it doesn't tie it to a floor of a salary schedule the same way B1 does.
I'm not sure I agree with you. And, yeah, the reason I put in the original bill that B1 in there was to make sure that the $5,000 pay increase didn't exponentially grow by another $5,000 every year. You know, we can't afford that. But, you know, you get $5,000 this year and $10,000 more next year and 15. I'd love to do it, but we don't have the money. But, and so we put
I get that.
in there, but then I wanted to be sure that we didn't have a reverse effect and put in the committee substitute language, but I'm trying to see if what you're pointing out would.
So what I'm saying is
I
that
think I am.
it's, so you've created the $5,000 increase in, basically in two sections. And Section B and then in Section B1. And Section B1 is it ties it to a salary schedule plus $500, and on a 10-month contract, that's $5,000.
Right.
Even my way of doing math. So, but the only place that it's tied to a district salary schedule right now, and where you have specificity about what it's tied to, is in a section that expires in 2020. So if we want to make sure that a district doesn't then in a future year drop its salary schedule and do away with the $5,000, this $5,000 pay increase, then we need to tie that to 2018,
I get where you're coming
19.
from.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, that's why I put that language in there, but then my correcting language, I think you're saying.
Your correcting language may have done away with it.
May have done away with it. Okay, can we work
Yes.
on
Because
something?
everybody has the same goal. I just want to make sure we don't create an unintended consequence.
Yes, I get it.
That some,
Let me play with, I think we can fix that.
I have no question we can fix it. I just want to call it to everybody's attention.
Yes, thank you.
And I think everybody wants to do that. So let's,
Yeah, I get it.
my additional question is on page 5, section 4, subpart B.
Section.
So in section 1, it says, it talks about the statutory minimum salary. And in section 1 and section 2, it makes reference to the cost of education index. And then it adds section 3, which includes any classroom teacher salary allotment provided under this, what we're doing here. Would that also be multiplied by the cost of education index like you see in section 1 and 2? And the reason I ask that is, if it does, it might not be a big cost, but I believe it would create a cost for some districts if we multiply it by the cost of education index. And with all the talk we've had about doing away with the cost of education index, I want to make sure we're not tying your pay increase to that.
Yeah, I get it. I would love to see the school finance bill.
Yeah.
Senator Taylor's working on it. I think probably the best way to answer your question is if there are problems, I think we could address them
I just want to call it to you.
in the school finance bill.
Fair enough.
I think.
I just,
Or on the floor.
or on the floor. I just, again, this is one of those things that I worry, we all know what it is we want to do, but I want to make sure everybody's paying attention to that so that we get it down the road, we achieve the goal we're attempting to achieve.
That's a good.
And you do think the cost of education adjustment, it would be multiplied against that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you
and
again.
we need to clarify that in.
I understand. I want to get it out there on the table so we're all talking about it.
In there. Well.
He's disagreeing?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's hard to keep a poker face then.
He's seen the bill. I haven't seen it yet. So.
Yeah. Well, at some point, we may ask him questions too.
We will. We will.
Anyway, again, thank you for doing this. The only reason I bring those up is so that we're
good.
achieving the goals that it is we want to achieve. So thank you very much for what you're doing.
Yep.
Senator Huffman.
Thank you. Senator Nelson, if I could, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions as it relates to pensions on your committee substitute.
Yes.
So it's my understanding that the intention of the committee substitute is to ensure that the raise is included in credible compensation that would be what we would be part of salary that is part of the pension process. So is that correct? So that would go towards when a teacher ultimately retires, and that would be calculated for their annuities and so forth,
Senator.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and so that would include too that everyone, all three legs of the stool, the district, the actives, and the state are all going to have to make a corresponding contribution as set out in statute, right, to fund the pension system. Is that
Right,
correct?
and
Yes.
Senator, you have done a lot of work during the interim on the whole issue of our teacher retirement system, and I know you've got legislation that I think will help us dovetail in very nicely
Yes.
with this legislation.
Okay. Well, I wanted to
I
make
won't
that-
preempt your
Yeah.
grand opening with
No,
that
I
plan,
just-
but, yes,
Yeah.
we will make sure
Okay.
that we uphold our part of the bargain on, I think it was 230-some million dollars that we're going to have to
Yeah,
put
and
in
it
as well.
just depending, of course, I just want, the teachers to understand SB 393, which is a bill. We're working on making that affordable. There'll be a committee sub, but the intent is to, of course, preserve the teachers' pensions, make sure it's actuarially sound, and to have a pathway, a quick pathway to get there. So thank you for working on this bill, a long-needed raise for our teachers, and I look forward to working with you on the pension side of it to
Yes.
make that work. Again, when we see the whole bill, the whole package, I think it'll all flow together nicely.
Oh, I think teachers
Yeah.
are going to love it.
Yeah, so thank you for working.
Current and
Yes.
retired, yes, thank you.
Okay, then no further questions. I'm going to ask that the committee amendment be rolled into the committee substitute. There are no objections, so ordered. Also, this time, we'll move to adopt the new committee substitute as amended.
Wait, Stephanie's talking, do we want to adopt this committee substitute yet? I move that we adopt the committee substitute.
You heard the motion, members. Is there any objection? Chair hears none.
Before we adopt it? Mr. Vice President Chairman, I'd like to move that we roll the amendment that we just adopted into the committee substitute, and then I would move that we adopt the new committee substitute that we just rolled an amendment into.
Members, you heard the motion.
Good.
Is there any objection?
None.
Chair hears none. So ordered.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so, Commissioner Ryan? Yeah. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would like to have our Commissioner of Education come up and
Ms.
provide
Moore,
testimony.
come up here to the table, please. Just for the record, identify yourself and then who you represent, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair. My name is Mike Morath, Commissioner of Texas Education Agency. I really just here to be a resource witness, so I'm happy to entertain any questions. I heard a couple of specific questions that were addressed in the initial dialogue, and thought I would try to address a couple of those. If it serves the committee, we have some general facts related to teacher compensation that I'm happy to pass out. They are
Being passed out?
being passed out. They are being passed out. So,
Mr. Chairman, before Commissioner Morath begins, can I just, I'm going to ask him a question, but it's not really a question, it's a statement.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner, there are a lot of teachers in this room, and you said something when you came before us on the budget, and I wrote it down, and I was writing as fast as you were talking, and then I had staff go back and make sure I wrote it down right. But I want you to hear what Commissioner Morath said. He said, first and foremost, we've got to love on those who love on our kids. That is the most beautiful statement I've heard in a long time. The single most important factor in school that affects the outcomes of students is the quality of the teacher in the classroom, and so we've got to be relentless in what we do to recruit, support, and retain teachers and principals. I love on those who love on our kids. That's the neatest thing I've heard, and I could not agree more. And I just want to lay that out there in introducing you to some people who may not have an opportunity to listen to you. Do you agree that our teachers make the difference in what goes on in the classroom?
Absolutely. With regard to what is happening inside the buildings, in many cases even outside the buildings, the teachers are far away the most important ingredient in public education and the most important resource for students other than their parents themselves.
I love it.
And we, as an agency, strategically, we have a series of priorities. The number one priority for us is improving how we recruit, support, and retain teachers and principals.
I love it. Okay, well, I just wanted to lay that groundwork, Mr. Chairman, and be happy for you to go over the teacher's compensation packet.
Yes, this was a couple of statistics. I think Senator West asked, where is teacher pay now, and what would happen to teacher pay with this bill? So slides 2 and 3 in the deck in front of you have a couple of different teacher pay things sliced a couple of different ways. So the first is the distribution of teachers, and of course there's about 350,000 teachers in the state of Texas, so you can see that count on the y-axis is just the count of teachers in Texas. But you can see the overwhelming majority of our teachers are paid between $50,000 and $60,000 in those middle bands. And we have 0.1% of teachers paid $100,000 or more in Texas. Back to Senator West's question. The slide 3, and that represents total teacher salary and stipends and that sort of thing. So it's not just their base pay, but it's any additional duty pay that they might receive. On slide 3 is just the base pay. This is essentially a function of the salary, the core salary schedules. And the dark blue line is the state's minimum salary schedule. But you can see that that is below all the other lines. This is by years of experience because very few districts pay any of their teachers on the state's minimum salary schedule. The 10th percentile of pay, so the bottom 10th percentile of pay, you can see is still well above the state's minimum salary. That's a kind of a, I don't know what color that is. Call that light yellow. And the gray bar is the average teacher pay by years of experience. And so you can see the average starting teacher pay is about 47.5, but there are some teachers that start in the 53 range, as you can see from the 75th percentile. So what happens because of this bill is everything moves up by $5,000.
Yes.
Everything. All these lines do. So at the very end, there's an appendix that is, it's actually the very last slide that shows you what average was 10 years ago. By years of experience, what average is today, that's the little dotted line, and then what average will be because of this bill, that's the sort of hard dashed line. Also shows what the lowest paid teachers would be paid. This is sort of the 10th percentile. Everything moves up by $5,000. So it just gives you a good idea of how this will impact teachers by varying years of experience and given the way that they are paid. And districts pay different amounts. Districts have budgets that are a function of the school finance system. I think Senator Watson asked about CEI. With regard to this bill, CEI doesn't actually have anything to do with it. The amount of money that's allocated to the districts will be $5,000 plus the amount required. It actually won't be really allocated. This will be taken out of the district's payment obligation for TRS payments because the state covers the share of the teacher retirement system up to the minimum salary schedule as adjusted by CEI. And what this bill will do is we'll just add $5,000 to that. So whether there's a CEI or not a CEI as a function of, say, a broader school finance bill, this bill won't have any effect. CEI is more or less irrelevant to this bill.
Senator Watson.
Thank you. So I want to, and that's great, but I want everybody to hear that as we go forward. And on page 5, where it sets out a statutory minimum salary, what you're saying, Commissioner, is that whereas there are aspects of the minimum salary where the cost of education adjustment is applicable, this is being expressly excluded from having the cost of education index applying to it in any way.
That's right, and just to be clear, this Section 4 is part of the Texas Government Code that speaks to the state's portion of TRS payments. So what we're talking about is the 6.8% state/district share. Let's say the minimum salary schedule as adjusted by the CEI for a given teacher is $40,000. So the 6.8% on the first $40,000 is paid for by the state. But let's say that the teacher's actual salary is $55,000. So districts are responsible for that extra $15,000 times 6.8%. That's current law. That'll also be law under the new framework. It's just as teachers' pay is increased by $5,000, the cost of TRS is not borne by the district, it's borne by the state.
And to put a finer point, or at least to highlight what you just said, what that would mean is that even though there's a new subsection 3 that includes this salary allotment under section 21.4023, it would not create any new cost to the district.
I can't say that specifically. The reason I can't say that specifically is because you'll have some districts that have, I think, active care is going to be maybe 75 basis point, 0.75, and then they may have workers' comp and some other things that are a function of salary.
Being tied to the total minimum salary.
Yeah. So independent of the district portion of TRS, which is 6.8%, there are typically other benefit payments. I think the last time I looked at that would average about 4.2%. And so I will also say that varies because there are some districts in the state of Texas that also pay Social Security taxes. And so for them, it's actually even a little higher than 4.2%. So there is some benefit issue that will potentially impact districts with this $5,000 delta.
All right, so
it's a fairly small dollar value.
It's not a big dollar amount, but again, I'll break that out into two parts. One is what we would call other benefits.
That's right.
And the second is, for clarity purposes, regardless of whether we have a cost, let's say we have a cost of education index.
Sure.
Like we currently do. What you're saying is there would be no increase to the districts because this 5,000 is expressly excluded from that.
That's right.
Well, not expressly excluded, it's just not included. And the second part of that is if we don't have a cost of education index, by definition then we would not have any increase to the local districts.
Yeah, that's right. If for example, so one of the recommendations of the School Finance Commission, and there are lots, but one of them would be to roll out CEI. If that's the case, then I would expect to see that bill hit this same section of the government code that you see on page 5. But section 3 doesn't have anything to do with it, so it'll remain unaffected.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Folkers.
Just a quick follow-up. So in the substitute, Madam Chair, you might be able to answer this, or Commissioner, the retirement is paid or borne out of, for this $5,000 is borne on the state as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I think the minimum that was looking at is $3.7 billion on the $5,000 per teacher. With that change, I don't know, Madam Chair, what the total number is.
I can tell you that. You can just move the local government cost estimate, which is about $130 million, into the state portion. So it's going to increase the fiscal note by about $130 million.
Annually or by?
I think that is annually. It would be 6.8% times $5,000.
That's
yeah.
200 and some.
Yeah. Times 350,000.
So roughly just under $4 billion.
Yeah. Yes.
Is what I would score this at. And that's a rough number. So we're at 3.7. We had
3.93.
Yeah.
3.96.
3.96.
That's 3.9.
Okay.
I don't do this without Excel in front of me, so
Yeah.
I think that was my main question. I want to follow up, Madam Chair, on the discussion that you and Senator Watson had on whether or not, written correctly, I know what the chair's intent is, but as written, do you feel like this goes on beyond the next school year?
So it is very clear that the funding goes on forever. Districts are going to get 5,000 times the number of FT, full-time classroom teachers they have. As they hire more teachers, they're going to get more $5,000 allocation. So the funding mechanism is clearly permanent. I think the question that Senator Watson said was, would districts have the ability at some point in time in the future to adjust their salary schedules downward, and as a result, see this end up supplanting as opposed to supplementing. I think there's a variety of ways that you could attack that from a policy-making perspective to sort of. I think the easiest cure would be the B2 expiration, because there is an open question as to whether or not you do, in fact, want to set in stone the current minimum salary schedules as opposed to set in stone a minimum pay guarantee for all current employees, those are two different policy objectives. So if you dissolve the expiration for B2, it probably solves all of Senator Watson's concerns and doesn't have some different policy implication.
And finally, in definition, this is classroom teachers, but does not include librarians and others in the pay schedule. Am I correct on that?
I believe you are correct. The statutory language specifically says classroom teacher. There are other employees that are covered under Chapter 21 minimum salary schedule language, but this language applies only to those that would be defined as full-time classroom teachers. There's also some question of what it means to be a full-time classroom teacher. There are some statutory language that's relevant to that has to do with sort of hours per day that a teacher would teach, and so we would carry that in. There's some rulemaking authority for the commissioner, so if there's any lack of clarity on that, that may be something that we have to address via rule.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Madam Chair?
Also, Senator Colhorst, it is a lot more difficult than it seems sometimes to write this. We wanted to make sure that our classroom teachers got this raise, first and foremost. And there is a section of the education code that I found that defines who a classroom teacher is, and it is an educator who is employed by a school district, teaches an average of 4 hours or more per day in an educational or career and technical setting. That's 153.1022. It doesn't include some very important educators, like librarians, there's a list of people. My first priority is the classroom teacher, as I just said, the code defines it. That is not to say that those others aren't important. And right now, a school district can increase the salary of those individuals aside from this bill if they choose to do that. We're running numbers right now, and I want everybody out there to know I love librarians. I was an elementary school teacher. I know librarians, and they're very important. There are a lot of people that play an important role. The most important right now that we've got to deal with is our classroom teacher. And we're running numbers to see how much is it going to cost to do some of these others. I will tell you, you open that door and, oh boy, it increased the cost. So we don't have a printing press. We only have a certain amount of money. And right now, I want that money to go to the teachers that I'm talking about in the classroom. But we're looking at, what else can we do? But school districts can raise, if they want to do that, nothing in this would keep them from that.
And Madam Chair, just, I'm going to clarify one more time for me, is that your intent, and as written, we see that the funding mechanism is there in perpetuity, as much as perpetuity is in this building, but that you mentioned in your opening statement that to change that, you would have to pass a bill to change that.
Future
We have a few
legislature would
tweaks
have
that
to-
we may need to, and I know, Madam Chair, as you say, it gets really difficult to write something that we so simply want to say.
Yeah.
Everyone, whatever your salary is, if you're a classroom teacher, you get $5,000 on top of that. And to the school districts, we're going to cover with this substitute, we're going to cover your side of the pension plan, which is another $260 million. So roughly a $4 billion injection into our school system to maybe help solve this chart where these lines have crossed. Commissioner, I've read your book. This is the chart that I've been pointing to a lot, and I've asked a lot of school children that's visited with me, that have come to visit, how many of you want to be a teacher? And in a group from Calhoun County ISD, only one child raised their hand. It was a guy, it was a male, and we meet those male teachers, as well as our females, but right in person out of that whole group. So I applaud your efforts. I look forward to working with you and clarifying this and moving this bill through.
Thank you, Senator. And you know what, too? I'm sure everyone on this committee has heard the same thing. I'll go speak at a Chamber of Commerce luncheon or a women's club luncheon and, talk about all kinds of things. And education, always one of the things that we talk about. But afterwards, inevitably, there'll be 3 or 4 people come up to me and say, I used to be a teacher too, and don't you miss it? Why aren't you a teacher anymore? Well, because I could make a whole lot more being fill in the blank. I don't want that to be a factor. I want those people to stay in the classroom. Money's not the only reason people leave, but we need to keep our good teachers in the classroom, and money's a part of that. So, thank you, Senator.
Madam Chair, I love my teachers. I wouldn't be where I am today but for my teachers.
Yes.
And the teachers are the pillar of a good public education system. I would like to say that education is the best equalizer. And we cannot have that without teachers. So.
Amen.
Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kudos again to you, Chairman Nelson, for bringing the bill forward. I know you've worked quickly for something we've all wanted for a long time. But I want to ask Commissioner, just on your page 2 of your distribution of total teacher pay, I'm just curious, the 100K plus, the 0.1%, does that include superintendents, or is all the information you have here, is that classroom teachers?
These are people that are coded in the system as classroom teachers.
So no superintendents?
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, so this definition of a teacher always gets really cloudy. I know PEAMS is a pretty massive number catcher, and as I've dealt into what is behind those PEAMS numbers, I find that there may be 20-hour teachers, but they're not teaching sometimes. So I would just ask that, as every school district is required to have an independent audit, and part of that is always going through and verifying, because my fear is we'll have a lot of 21-hour new classroom teachers that are not instructing, as we have seen in the past. So I would just say that everybody wants to do this, but it's the classroom teachers, those boots on the ground, those frontline people, those relationship people that build love with those kids.
Absolutely.
And so just make sure, as part of the audit standards that TEA sets out for our auditors, and I used to be one of those guys, that this is a very clear area that they verify those people that are getting that $5,000, and that there's remedy when they find that there's not, because I'm telling you, the games that can get played and will get played and do get played, because this money's intended to go to these teachers that are sitting in this room. But I know as an auditor, you take that job very seriously. So whatever you need to define in your rules to make sure that happens, and it kind of goes to what Senator Watson was saying the other while ago, you leave loopholes, there's smart people out there. So let's make sure that we tighten up the loopholes so that the money is actually heading to a teacher's paycheck, and not someone that's more administrative or more ancillary to the classroom. They just happen to have a classroom title.
Yeah, what I might say. So we have cause to review a variety of data sources that are submitted to us, and different elements of data have different incentives associated with them. The larger the incentives are, the more likely you are to see some pockets respond, say, less than admirably to those incentives. If there's a desire for us to, say, periodically review the data that is submitted to us and/or sort of have a very light touch review structure for this, it may warrant some reflection of that in the bill, because I think absent that, we likely wouldn't have any additive capacity to sort of verify the accuracy of this information.
Commissioner, one of the main challenges that we have is actually dealing with school districts who use funding for non-educational purposes. And it's a real challenge for us in trying to set some parameters to make sure that the funding that's appropriated and paid by taxpayers to educate our children are actually used for that purpose, and not for other purposes that are not directly related to that, and trying to come up with those parameters and then follow up by the state to make sure and do an audit and try to make sure that the money is being spent properly.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Follow up, Rod. So what I just heard you say is the current bill doesn't give you the tools to be able to audit this area to make sure that they're compliance related, and if they're non-compliance, you have no remedy.
Yeah, what I would say is we actually do have broad investigative authority. Right. It's not like we don't have subpoena power. There's some loopholes in our broad investigative authority, but what you would want to do for this is you'd want to stand up like an automated report that you run once a year that highlights certain aspects of risk, and then you'd want to have a couple of extra auditors that are making phone calls to verify the information, and then if something doesn't seem right, then you can send an investigator out on site.
And I appreciate the complexity.
So it's a fairly small administrative allocation for that purpose. That's not in our fiscal note. It's not.
But I would suggest it's this. Just to add a separate schedule required from your independent auditors that are out in the state. It says
that could help.
Allocation of $5,000. We verified sample. They met the test. They're in the classroom. They're teaching something. Hopefully something that's. I mean, you don't just do it by rule. You don't have to create a new bureaucracy to check it.
Yeah,
it just needs to be something.
That may be a good solution.
Senator Kokos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A quick follow-up on looking at the new added employees as the years go on. So if a school district, let's just say minimum, they start their new teachers at $45,000, and they have been. What guarantee do we have that they don't say, hey, I can drop my starting salary because it's well above the minimum salary that's in statute. I'm going to drop that by 40. I'm going to use the state's 5,000. So it's still $45,000. Do we have any? And Madam Chair, is your intent that the minimum salary was, or they begin their starting salary at 45 for a new teacher, and then was your intent for it to say, okay, there's your 45, now it's going to be 50,
Yes.
or was your intent?
No, in fact, we wrote, Mr. Chairman.
Because that's market-driven.
We
starting
wrote
salary.
language in the bill to specifically prevent from happening what you're talking about potentially happening. What will happen is, every year, the commissioner's going to look and see how many classroom teachers there are. He will multiply that number times 5,000 and cut a check to each school district for that month. If they have more teachers than they had the year before, they'll get that money times 5,000 more. If they have fewer teachers, they're going to have that number of times zero. It's a whole separate fund check that will go to each school district.
So the intent would be that, and I have, in the interim, I went all over my 70 school districts and met with different superintendents, and starting salary ranges pretty widely in my Senate district. And so the intent, Madam Chair, would be that the starting salary is not supplant it.
It
You
will
want
not
it on,
supplant
in
it.
addition,
And we've
to
got-
use it as a recruiting tool. So it had been 45,000 at XYZ ISD, then it becomes 50,000.
That's the intent.
How do you feel about that, Commissioner?
I
You think
I think
the
you've got two different considerations you would make in the bill related to this. One is if you wish that to be true, then you could reinstate. There used to be language in Chapter 21 that basically said districts never have the authority to reduce their salary schedule. That language was repealed in 2010, 2011. So if you add that back, then it accomplishes that particular policy objective. And that could be in this bill. If the policy objective is different, which is that all the current practicing teachers get this $5,000 pay, then you dissolve the expiration of B2. So it's really just, it depends on what you wish to accomplish with the bill.
Okay. Madam Chair, thank you for the clarification.
Senator Kaufman.
Thank you. I've gotten a little confused here, and I think it's because maybe I was looking at the old fiscal note, but anyway. But it's a question that Senator Colcourse asked you, I think, time before, not this last set of questionings, but before, and she was talking about, she asked you about, so this $5,000 raise, the state is going to pay the pension portion, but I think, did she say, but we'll pay the district portion as well, and you agreed? I don't think that's correct. So maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that's what she insinuated, but that's not correct.
Whose portion?
The state.
We just say the state portion.
That's
And
correct.
that is different than current law, after you get over a certain amount, correct?
That's right.
Could you re-explain that? I just think we just need to clarify it,
Yeah,
because
so-
it's gotten a little confusing.
Yeah, so again, you've got TRS and then you've got other benefits. So we're only talking about TRS
Okay.
here. With regard to the way current law works on TRS is that up to the minimum salary schedule multiplied by the CEI, which is generally 1.03 to 1.18 multiplier. It varies from district to district. So up to the minimum salary schedule times that multiple, that 6.8% of the teacher's salary is paid by the state. And then if they're paying above that minimum salary schedule as multiplied by the CEI, then that is paid for by local districts.
All the increase over that amount. is
That's
paid
right.
by the
So
local
if
district.
you go-
Okay, that's under current law.
That's under current law.
If they choose to pay more, okay.
That's right. So as a visual aid, if you refer to slide 3,
Yeah, that might be helpful to me.
that dark blue line on slide 3 is the state minimum salary schedule.
Okay.
Let's assume that happens to be the state minimum salary schedule times CEI. It's not actually correct, but let's assume that. So if a teacher's paid on the gray line, the district is paying between the blue and the gray 6.8%, but the state's paying everything up to the blue
Yeah.
times 6.8%. So that's under current law. That's also under the new law. What the new law does is it's going to increase the teacher's pay by $5,000, and the 6.8% is going to be eaten by the state, not the district.
But they are still responsible for their contribution.
Yeah,
Okay.
so effectively, whatever they're paying today, it's still over the state minimum salary times CEI. They're going to pay $5,000 more, but you might as well just factor that into the state base. So they're paying the exact same amount of TRS district portion when this changes as they are today.
And what about TRS care?
So the other thing would be other benefit payments that
And that's what you're talking about
that
when you
are
say
optional in many cases. So some districts, for example, pay not just TRS, but they pay Social Security. There's a few districts, not too many. Some districts are in TRS active care. Not all the districts are in TRS active care, so some districts just pay private insurance. That's typically a function of your salary level, but not entirely.
But this bill allows for them to continue to pay proportionally as they have been paying. Is that correct?
Yes, but to the extent that their rates were a function of teacher salaries in the aggregate, teacher pay in the aggregate, if the teacher pay goes up by $5,000, then that sort of benefit delta the school districts may be responsible for. That's correct. That also could speak to Senator Perry's concern about sort of gaming the system, because if there's at least some portion of this that the districts have to pay, you have fewer concerns about that kind of gaming happening.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Thanks.
Just an announcement, we have an overflow room for the public in E1.012. So anybody that can come in or needs more room can go to E1.012. There's an overflow room. Any other questions, Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Before we let the commissioner go, and thank you for bringing this visual. I think I'm a visual learner, and I think it's very helpful to see those numbers. Commissioner, I feel so strongly about and in agreement with what you said about our teachers. And I really do want to help them by increasing their salary. But I want to make it really clear, and I want you to back me up on this.
Yes, ma'am.
That there's nothing passing this bill does to negatively impact any other plans that we have going on as a result of the School Finance Commission. This doesn't preclude anything they're doing. I mean, the only restrictions we have are how much money we have to do other things. But I just want to make it clear, because there's some, rumors out there floating around that it's an either-or thing. And my question to you will be, is there anything in this that would prevent us from moving forward with the Larry Taylor's good legislation that we're real anxious to see?
Not to my knowledge.
Good. Okay. Well,
Any other questions?
no, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you,
for
members.
testimony.
Well, first we get, these are invited witnesses.
Okay, we have some additional invited testimony. Tonya Gray from the ATPE, and Lonnie Hollingworth Jr., an attorney from Texas Classroom Teacher Association. Ms. Gray, Lonnie Hollingsworth, come on up, please. You'll be limited to 3 minutes, and you may just identify yourself, who you represent, and then you may proceed.
Good morning. My name is Tonya Gray. I am a proud public educator and the Vice President of the Association of Texas Professional Educators. I'm here to speak on behalf of ATPE in support of Senate Bill 3. I want to thank Senator Nelson and this committee for inviting me to come testify today. Senator Nelson, I would like to thank you specifically for hearing Texas educators and for hearing myself when I came to speak before you during the special session about the $1,000 bonus. Thank you so much to you and Senator Huffman for listening to our concerns and bringing forth a bill that is being fully funded by the state and taking care of our teachers. So thank you very much for hearing us. Improving teacher quality is critical for giving our students the best opportunities to succeed in the classroom. Research shows that teacher quality is the most important school factor in student achievement. But a professional compensation package is one key element to recruiting and retaining the best and the brightest, and to provide that success for our students. Many teachers, unfortunately, are leaving the classroom to either go into administration positions or leaving the classroom entirely because they cannot support their families on the pay that they are receiving. I personally can tell you that when I reached my 17th year of education, teaching in Hawley, Texas, I had to make a hard decision. I loved what I was doing, but I had no promise of advancement in pay or career unless I left the district and moved to someplace else. I love what I do now, but I had to leave behind children that I love to work with. Sadly, I have a lot of fellow professionals that don't have that option, and they are hurting with the rising cost of health care. So thank you very much for making this an across the board for all educators. We do appreciate. We also appreciate that this bill is set up to be a bill that guarantees this pay, and that differentiated pay would be in addition if a district decides to do that. So we thank you that that has been put in the language of this bill. ATPE looks forward to working with you and helping you to craft this bill and other bills and taking care of our educators. And I look forward to answering any questions that you have for me this morning.
Any questions, members? Thank you very much for the testimony. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Lonnie Hollingsworth Jr. I am General Counsel with the Texas Classroom Teachers Association. Thank you very much, Chair Nelson, for filing this bill. It's about time. It is a very important bill. We really appreciate it. We look forward to working with you. And I've passed out some written testimony. And one thing I'd just like to point out real quickly on that, on the last page of that, you'll see a chart. You said you were a visual learner, and I always find this kind of interesting. And what that does is it tracks the relationship in operating expenditures per pupil, percentage increase in operating expenditures, and the percentage increase in the average teacher salaries. And you see that unless you increase teacher salaries, unless there's some kind of mechanism like an across-the-board pay raise, and here you'll see 2006, the line for the teacher salaries went up and closer to operating expenditures, and then it starts to go apart. And then you had another increase in 2009. Operating expenditures went up, and the teacher salary started to keep up. So it's important that you direct some of the funding to classroom teacher salaries in order for there actually to be raises for teachers. So we really appreciate the approach that this bill has taken, and we think it's critical, and really appreciate you and the leadership of the Senate and all the members of this committee who are co-sponsors of this legislation for bringing this forward. Would like to speak to some specific aspects of the bill. With regard to there's the provision in there that talks about merit salary increases in addition to the salary allotment, and we would suggest, and I've also passed out some suggested language to address some of the concerns. It mentions that nothing keeps districts from doing merit pay and above in addition to this, and you said as you laid it out, or anything else, and we think there needs to be some language that says or anything else, so it doesn't limit what they can do. And also with regard to the point that Senator Watson brought up, I've passed out some specific language that might address that, and it's not the only way you can do it. I don't know that it would be getting rid of the sunset B1 is going to do it by itself, but this is language that's similar to across-the-board pay raises that were done in 99 and 2006 and also 2009, and it's basically, it says you can't lower salaries below what the teacher made at the end of the first year of this implementation. So by doing that, you lock it in. So this kind of language, it doesn't have to be the specific language, but this will address that concern, and I think it's important because there are those out there that say this is just a one-time thing. Clearly the money goes on, but unless you tie it down for school districts, and I was involved in grievances in 99 and 2006 and 2009. I just soon not do that. I don't get paid by the hour, so the clearer you can make it, the better. So we look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. There are no questions, and thank both of you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Before we call up additional witnesses, I think this is how good this system works. Senator Watson has an amendment that I think is going to address your concerns, and I would ask, Mr. Chairman, that we just consider that right now and put that issue to bed.
Is there any objections, members? The chair hears none, so ordered.
Actually, I need to make a couple of motions.
Objection to considering his amendment. Yeah.
If there's no objection to considering the motion as indicated by the chair, Mr. Chairman, I would move to reconsider the vote by which the committee substitute was adopted.
Members, you heard the motion. Any objections?
No.
Chair hears none, so ordered.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, if I might be recognized for an additional motion.
You recognize.
Members, you're being handed a proposed amendment. It would be committee amendment number 2. And I'll give you a moment to get that. And what that amendment would do, and by the way, consistent with what the testimony we just heard, is it would add, if you look at page 2, the issue I brought up about the expiration date, the expiration date needs to be in there in order to meet the chairwoman's intent, as she said, about not allowing for a continued rolling increase. but there would be an additional B3 under that expiration date now. And for clarity purposes, it would say a full-time classroom teacher employed by a school district in the 2019-2020 school year is, as long as the teacher is employed by the same district, entitled to a salary that is set at least equal to the salary the teacher received for the 2019-2020 school year. So that now the bill would achieve both the chairwoman's intent of not having a continued rolling increase, but in addition, it would have the intent of making it this 5,000 permanent. So with that explanation, Mr. Chairman, I would move to roll committee amendment number 2, adopt committee amendment number 2, and roll it into the committee substitute.
Are there, members heard the motion, are there any objections?
The amendment is quite acceptable. In fact, Senator Watson, I had this originally in the bill and didn't think we needed it. So we did.
This way, it's belt and suspenders.
Yep, I agree. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. And Mr.
That's
Chairman,
amendment number 2, just to clarify.
it's amendment number 2, and as I understand it, we just adopted amendment number 2 and rolled it into the committee substitute, and I would now move that we adopt the committee substitute as amended.
Can I add one question, Mr. Chairman? If I could.
Senator Bentecourt.
Yeah, Senator Watson, just to make it clear for the record that, so basically what you're doing is that you're saying that the $5,000 can't expire, okay, as long as the teacher's employed in the same district.
That's right.
Right? Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, you heard the motion. Is there any objection? The chair has none. Committee substitute as amended is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I think we are ready now to begin public testimony.
I bet Mr. Hollingsworth thinks that's the fastest anybody's ever reacted to his testimony.
Okay.
Senator Whitmire moved.
You want to move that we limit?
I don't believe in limiting.
He wants to limit to 2 minutes.
Why would you limit it? Not that many.
I don't care.
There's not that many. I'm telling you, this important. You've done this much
He's
goodwill.
griping. He's complaining.
You've done this much goodwill. Why don't you just
Okay.
do it right?
3 minutes. Give him 20 minutes. I don't
Don't leave, okay?
Yes.
Senator Kelly, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Madam Chair, there is, the question is, do you have a longer period of speaking for everyone, which makes those that are at the end of the train be much, much later, right? Or if we limit it to 2 minutes, that way we get to hear more people, and those at the end of the train aren't having to wait till very, very, very late. And so,
Mr. Chairman, I have a compromise motion. I would just suggest that we allow 3 minutes, but we ask the people there to try to limit your comments to 2 minutes so everybody has
And
time
don't
to
be
talk.
redundant.
Is that
right.
good?
It's just difficult on those that are like
Yes.
number 150 in line.
Yeah.
And so if you would,
And try not to be redundant.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Thank you for the compromise. At this time, we'll start public testimony. We'll open public testimony, and I will call 4 people to come up to the table and testify, and then I'll call the next 4 in the front row to be ready to come up to the front table. We have Gina Listuroff, Virginia Caldwell, Cristina Ramirez, and Mary Crisp. Up on the front row, we have Callie Evans. We have Judy Rich, and we have Tracy Dunlap, and we'll have Christy Roan. Okay. Gina, you identify yourself, who you represent, and then you may proceed.
My name is Gina Disseldorf, and I teach at Spring Branch ISD, Springwoods High School, and I represent myself. I've been teaching science for 29 years, and I love my job, and I plan to keep teaching for a while. 2 years ago, I had 125 students and two 52-minute off periods to do everything I needed to do. Last year, I ended up with 30 extra students, 155 students, and the same amount of time to do all my work, but my pay was less due to the increase in insurance, even though my insurance choices didn't change. This year, I now have 185 students and only one 52-minute off period to get all my lesson planning, my translating for my ELL kids, my differentiation for my special ed, different layer kids, level kids, all my grading, my meetings with parents, my meetings for testing, my meetings for special ed, all the work that I do. And I'm actually getting paid even less. Again, my insurance is the same plan. I have in the past always taken work home with me, but this year I find that I am working even longer hours at school, getting there way earlier, staying way later, sometimes 2 to 2.5 hours later than my pay. And then I take work home on top of that. Because I just don't have time during the day to do it. 52 minutes to get everything done just doesn't work. I don't know many other professions that pay you less consecutively for 2 years and make you do more work each year. So I definitely support this bill, and I appreciate you supporting teachers so that we are able to stay in a profession that we love.
Senator Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, on Spring Branch ISD, are y'all in TRS care or are you in a...
We're in TRS care.
Thank you.
Senator Benton Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for making the drive, because that's a great statement of how much your workload's up. So, right. So I hope the 5,000 at least helps with the base pay, not the workload. So thanks for making the drive.
Mr. Chairman, may I, and you know, I'm not going to ask everybody questions, but I have two daughters who were, and it's past tense, teachers. Both of them, because of salary, was a huge issue. Could make a whole lot more somewhere else. Insurance costs were the killer. I cannot believe how much it costs for health insurance for our teachers, as every place else. But Mr. Chairman, at some point, I think it would be helpful for the committee to know just an average of what, I don't want to get personal with anybody, but I don't think anybody realizes the percentage of their salary that teachers are paying in health care costs. And that, at some point, is we need to, I don't want to be intrusive, but somebody might.
When I started 29 years ago, I think my insurance premiums were like $17 a month, and now they're closer to almost 200. Or sorry, I'm in a paycheck, and now they're closer to almost 200 paycheck. And it's just me. I'm single. Just me.
I think the healthcare costs are one of the biggest challenges we face for a simple reason that the healthcare costs are increasing much faster than the paychecks.
Well, as people testify, if somebody wants to share, I mean, I could share my daughter's shocking. Holy cow, I couldn't believe it. Senator
Whitmire.
And the chair is focused on health care, but then also factor in your retirement deduction. So, without being personal, your take-home is a heck of a lot less than the gross that districts would talk about, or even this panel would talk about. And I assume you still spend a fair amount of money on your own supplies.
Yeah.
That's another conversation. But Madam Chair, it's the health care that is continuing to rise, and then for sure the deduction for your retirement. So it's hard for a single mom or male teacher to support a family.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You got to love your work, obviously, or you would do something different.
Caldwell? Mrs. Caldwell?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Virginia Caldwell, and I appreciate you hearing from me today. I am a member of Texas State Teachers Association, and I'm the current treasurer of the Hutto Educators Association, and I'm here on behalf of our organization in support of Senate Bill 3. I am currently in my 8th year of teaching. I teach at Hutto Middle School. I teach learning strategies and ESL. And my annual salary falls below that average of $50,000 to $60,000 that Commissioner Morath mentioned. I'm paid on a 7-year step, and I make $48,700. I don't receive a stipend for my master's degree. I don't receive a stipend as an ESL teacher. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's, and I still make not much more than a general manager at McDonald's, about $1,000. I have 4 sons. The youngest is 8, and he has autism spectrum disorder and low vision. And in order to help meet our needs, I Uber every Friday after school, every Saturday, most Sundays. And so on top of the 10 hours I spend every day at school, Monday through Friday, and the additional hours of work I take home for when my family goes to bed, I'm also working an additional 10, 20 hours a week. Sometimes I work spring break, I work Christmas break, I work Thanksgiving break, I work my summer break. I don't get to spend much time with my family. I average on a 10-hour shift with Uber, or 10 hours total, I make about $300. My current daily rate, when you take my salary of $48,700 and divide that by 187, is $260.45. We have to make hard choices. My son can't get his ABA therapy at $60 an hour. He needs between 3 and 10 hours a week. If I paid for 10 hours of ABA therapy, that's $2,400 a month. That's my bring home. So to answer your question about insurance, my salary roughly is $4,000 a month, and I bring home $2,400, and that's everything coming out.
Senator Whitmire. And that's what I was going to ask you. And each of you will make a real difference by testifying today. I don't think a lot of my colleagues, not the ones on this panel that's getting the benefit from your testimony, but let's say the public has no idea that you make approximately $4,000 a month, but you take home about $2,400 a month, which is in most areas of the state just not livable, which you comment that you supplement it with Uber, but putting a face on the problem we're trying to address, and we're not totally fixing it because some members wanted to go above the 5, but we are have other demands. But you take home with probably the most important job in the state, $2,400 a month.
Yes, sir.
It's pretty amazing. Thanks for being here.
Yes.
Take home $2,400.
I want to add to Senator Whitmire's comments, not just the members, but our Lieutenant Governor, his goal is $10,000. And,
and this helps.
It helps. It's a great first step. Yes, this helps us understand exactly how much you're bringing home. And the fact that you're having to Uber to just make ends meet is a strong statement.
Just if you took someone living in modest means, an apartment, for instance, $1,500, whatever. I'm not talking about you any longer. I'm just talking about one of my constituents. An apartment housing cost $1,500, $1,700 for a modest apartment. Car note of about $500 or $600. You can't make it on a teacher's salary. And I haven't even gone into clothing, food, or the raising children. Certainly, if they have some health issues. So. You're forced. It'd be interesting to talk to teachers. Of course, in fact, just for a moment, it's important. I had a daughter that taught 2 years, and she would come home, still living at home, and said, "Dad, you can't imagine what I hear in the teacher's lounge." My daughter was blessed. She had a lucky family. She said the teachers, and they forming, modeling, shaping her attitude about the teaching profession. in the long-term plans, she said they sit around and talk about what bills they're going to be able to pay this month. They'll either reduce a car note, a light bill, or some credit card, but they have to choose what bills they're going to address this month. And it really made a heck of an impression on her. She didn't get burnt out on the salary, she got burnt out on the discipline issue. As a second grade new teacher, they didn't give her enough assistance on how to handle some disruptive kids, and she finally threw up her hands. But yeah, we haven't even talked about your working conditions, which is another hearing. But you've really done a good job to let us know your challenges with your current salary structure and how beneficial this increase will be, but we shouldn't stop there, quite frankly. Thank you for being here.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, we heard testimony from the Commissioner of Education at another hearing. He had a fascinating presentation that he gave, and one of the things, really sad things, included in that was, would teachers advise their own children to go into the profession? I gotta tell you, there are born teachers. There are people who ought to be teachers, and if a teacher is advising their own children not to go into the profession, we don't want money to be a factor there. We want our teachers to encourage their children to go. Yeah, okay, I'm not going to say anything. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Amelia?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Christina Ramirez, and I'm coming to you guys today, and I just want to say thank you for taking this time to listen to us. I have been in education for 11 years. I have been a teacher and an administrator. My experience is both on a Title I campus, which means that more than 50% of the students are economically disadvantaged, and an affluent campus. And what I'm coming to you guys today is to think of a strategy to encourage experienced teachers to stay on our Title I campuses. We know that the experience will help them. Will help our students and each other as colleagues. We have a lot of turnover on our campuses, where right now on our campus, we have about 12 new teachers to our campus. And what happens is that, for example, our kinder team is practically new teachers. And so to help support one another, but most importantly to support our kids, it's their knowledge of the curriculum, it's their knowledge of classroom management, and it's going to be that those passionate teachers on our campus that are going to make a difference. And what happens is that in being on both types of campuses, teachers leave for different reasons, whether it's to go to another profession or to stay home with their family. But also in our world, what's happening is that they are considering moving to affluent campuses because it is almost like the promotion. You're moving on up. And we need to reverse that in making teachers see that their experience is needed on our Title I campuses to make a difference with those students that have higher need and more gaps and behavior needs, and that's where we need those teachers. That's pretty much it.
Senator Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad you testified, and it's kind of same subject matter, a little different scenario, but the rural communities. I just had a meeting with several of the teachers in the room, and so they're $30,000 a year salaries in the rural communities. They're moving over to the urban areas that are not far away, and I can give you an example: $42,000 starting pay in Lubbock versus $30,000 in a town that's 15 miles different. So as we go through this school finance package and things that Senator Taylor has been working on, Chairman Taylor, just keep in mind that the rural have the same challenges but different reasons for those challenges to have that migration of teachers and some of the experienced teachers that you have. And I don't know the numbers. I'm going to make a statement. I don't know the numbers, and that's usually bad, but I would assume that they're probably all Title I, or a large majority of the rural communities are Title I, with some of the migrant populations and stuff that move through those school systems. So just as we talk about it and come up with those incentives and how that works, the rural side of that, teachers are a short supply, and great teachers are really in short supply in those areas because they compete just 10 miles away. When we think urban and rural, we usually think geographically hundreds of miles. These are 10 and 15 mile differentials that make the difference.
Yeah.
Thank you. Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to add at this point that, this bill is complementary to what we're doing with the School Finance Commission and that bill that's coming, because we do recognize, particularly what you brought with the Title I. That's our challenge. That's the demographic. It's now our largest demographic is low income. It's also our fastest growing demographic, and historically that's been our least, they've gotten the least accomplishment as far as education goes. And we cannot continue on that path. And so you'll see a lot of what the School Finance Commission bill is going to look like is addressing that particular demographic, make sure we have our best teachers going there and helping with these issues, and encouraging, helping with early childhood. All these things are addressing that demographic. So you'll see a lot of those things in that bill. And it is coming. Remember, I keep hearing these comments about that bill. It is a little complicated, but you'll see a lot of that, what we're talking about today is in there. But it's complementary to what we're doing here. We do need to raise our teacher salaries, but we also need to recognize our very best teachers and encourage them to go to our more challenging campuses. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Crisp.
Chairwoman Nelson and committee members, I'm Mary Crisp. I am a Texas public educator in Abilene ISD, and I am testifying on behalf of myself, and I am in favor of this bill. I have been in and around education for 26 years. I was a substitute for 12. I've been a teacher for 14. And this bill will make a difference in my life. I am a single mom, and I have 2 daughters, 2 grandchildren, and at any given time in my career, I have worked 2 to 5 part-time jobs. The hard part for me is my students, I create the future. Without teachers, you do not read, you do not write, you do not fill out job applications. We as educators, we create the future. And my hard part is the fact that for me to be able to afford the basics of life, like had been said, I too bring home $2,600 a month. I supplement my income. My daughter is a senior. She's going off to college. And even though she's going to be gone, I'm still going to have to work 2 to 5 more jobs to be able to help fund her education. The hard part is, even with pay increases over the course of my time, going from a sub, which was a good pay at the time, to being an educator because God called me into this education field. I ran from it, but I finally gave in because I knew I was the future. I helped create leaders such as yourself, such as your children, and it is a blessing to be in my classroom. I have 44 students. I'm a special education teacher. I would not trade them 1 minute in any given day. They are my kids. They are my kids. They will always be my kids. They contact me after they graduate on Facebook and ask me questions about life, and I am blessed to have that. I want to say thank you, but also please consider the paras and the janitors in some sort of funding, because my para is a single mom as well. She works extra part-time jobs. I convinced her to go to college to become an educator, which she is doing at Hardin-Simmons. Right now she's meeting with Senator Lambert. The hard part though is I also have a janitor who's a single dad, and he works 3 jobs. Please consider our support staff in some way, shape, or form, because we are a family in education. We are a family on my campus and in my building, and we all support each other through the good, the bad, and the ugly, including our kids, our parents, our coworkers, and our administration. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much for thinking about us.
Well, thank you for your commitment and your passion.
I love my kids.
It shows.
Yes, sir. I will.
Okay, we're going to have the next panel. Thank you all for your testimony.
Thank you. Have a blessed day.
Then the next board to come up to the front row, Kara Beulah, Nancy Lambert, Jennifer LeBoon, and Mark Terry. Please come up to the front row.
Yeah.
And we'll start with you. Just identify yourself, who you represent, and then you may proceed.
Chairwoman Nelson and committee members, my name is Callie Evans. I am a Texas public school science educator of 12 years at Willis ISD and a member of ATPE. I am testifying on behalf of myself in favor of Senate Bill 3. Thank you for making public education a priority. 16 of my family members are educators. Between my husband, who holds a master's degree in education administration, and myself, we hold 4 jobs to stay afloat. 5 nights a week, my husband gets off of work and then works as a pharmacy technician until 11:30 at night. We know the hardships of having a low compensation. We know, and our health suffers because of it. However, others do have it worse. Our auxiliary staff. Please consider providing a meaningful, livable salary and benefits for all education staff with safeguards, so we can be home with our families and not working extras to live. SB 3 is a great starting point, but we need room for all. Education is a team sport, and we can't do it without everybody on our team. Thank you.
Madam Chair, our teachers play such an important role in public education. They need to get paid a living wage. Shouldn't be doing it for free.
Totally agree, Mr. Vice Chairman. Totally.
Next.
My name is Tracy Dunlap. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Maplewood Elementary and a leader with Education Austin. I'm here representing the Texas American Federation of Teachers in support of SB 3. Although school is in session today, a pay increase is so important to me that I'm using a personal day in order to be here. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. Like many teachers, early in my career I had a second job out of necessity. Now, 30 years into this profession, I find myself thinking of taking on a second job again when I need to be able to focus on my young students. The small raises provided by my district have not been enough to make up for increases in health insurance, housing, and other expenses. I'm pulling money out of my savings each month just to get by, which is a constant source of stress. I'm barely keeping up with my mortgage payments, and I can't afford to make needed repairs to my home. Anything urgent has to be paid for on credit, and my credit card balances continue to rise. A few months ago, I had a health scare, and my first thought was, can I afford this? When I recently discovered a $25 prescription had gone up to $85, I thought, can I get by without this medication? Unfortunately, my story is not unique. Teachers are leaving the state or leaving the profession altogether out of frustration at not being compensated in a way that values the very complex and important work that we do. While it's true that classroom teachers are struggling, so are the other members of the team who work toward the success of our students. From the bus drivers who get children safely to school, to the cafeteria workers who make sure children are fed, to the teaching assistants who often work with our most challenging students, to the custodians who keep our schools clean and maintained, we all contribute to the safety, health, academic growth, and social-emotional well-being of the children of Texas. Texas AFT would therefore request that all members of the education team be added to this bill. We all need a raise. Texas AFT also requests that you remove the permissive language of the bill allowing for additional merit pay on top of the raise, which could tie future salary increases to unreliable standardized test scores never intended for this purpose. The STAR test is a diagnostic tool to help teachers plan instruction, not an indicator of teacher effectiveness. We should be encouraging a climate of collaboration, not a system that rewards only a few based on a flawed measure of success. In conclusion, please accept my thanks in advance for working toward a permanent, no-strings-attached pay raise for all school employees. Since teachers in Texas currently average $7,000 less than the national average, we welcome this down payment on increasing our compensation. We're counting on you to prioritize pay and school finance this session. You have a chance to show public school employees that you recognize our hard work and dedication to this profession and to the children that we serve.
Thank you for your testimony.
Senator Nelson and committee members, my name is Judy Rudabush Rich.
I represent the Texas Speech Language Hearing Association and myself as an individual. I provide this testimony in support of Senate Bill 3 with a request for consideration of naming school-based speech-language pathologists as recipients in this bill. I'm a speech-language pathologist and immediate past president of the Texas Speech Language Hearing Association. I have a master's degree in communication sciences and disorders and a doctorate in education administration from the University of North Texas. I'm retired as assistant superintendent for student services in the Irving ISD. There are two key issues related to inclusion of speech-language pathologists as named recipients. One has to do with the children and youth who we serve, and the other has to do with school finance. Speech-language pathologists serve children who struggle with speech, language, and hearing. They have extensive academic and clinical preparation for working with individuals who have disabilities in the areas of speaking, listening, reading, writing, and hearing, and are valuable members of the school team of professionals working to support high levels of literacy for all children. The Texas Education Agency has designated speech-language pathology as a special education instructional service, and as such can be viewed in the same category as classroom instruction. Classroom teachers and speech-language pathologists work together to support high levels of literacy. Speech-language pathologists can work with children to prevent placement in special education through a response to intervention model or through special education, often in conjunction with another disability such as autism, intellectual disability, specific learning disability, or auditory impairment. We cannot separate language from learning. All of the professionals who support strong academic achievement should be included in Senate Bill 3 if they are full-time and provide instruction 4 hours per day. The second key issue relates to school finance. In 2017-18, there were 4,785 speech-language pathologists employed in Texas public schools, but that was not enough. And often those speech-language pathologists work multiple jobs. There is a critical shortage of highly qualified professionals. School districts are obligated to provide services through special education, so when there are personnel vacancies, services are contracted with outside agencies. This costs the school district almost twice the amount of salary per contracted provider. Including speech-language pathologists in Senate Bill 3 would allow school districts to recruit and retain employees and thereby support the language learning needs of over 250,000 children currently served by SLPs in Texas public schools.
Thank you, Senator Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, and so, our school system works with a partnership with the state and locals. Have any of the three that spoke, I won't ask the fourth one yet because she hadn't spoke, actually showed up at the district budget hearings as salaries are being determined, local budgets are being prioritized? I know that, we spend a whole lot of money on things that are actually not part of classrooms, but do y'all take an active engagement on a local level in your LISD's budget process?
Absolutely. I am actually on the District Improvement Committee. And then I'm also on the Leadership Academy, in which we just got schooled by our Assistant Superintendent of Finance on how exactly schools are funded. So we are firsthand, and we do see that the majority of our salaries, or the majority of the funds that the school gets does go to salaries. Unfortunately, even being in a district that is a Title I district, we got Robin Hooded. So there was even less to go around, and so they tried to provide for health care, even bringing in a clinic, because the only insurance that we can get is a $5,000 deductible. I have not been able to go to an endocrinologist to fix my deficiencies and breaking bones, bumping things, because I cannot afford my health care.
I just asked the question because I think a lot of times that there's the misnomer that the state's all of the public education side of it, and it requires a team approach, requires a partnership, and it requires community education, because I think the general consensus is most people are too busy to pay attention, and as your local budgets are being developed and teachers are a priority, everybody I ever meet says our classroom teachers need to get more money. Yet I look at school budgets, and sometimes that's not reflective in that. So they need to hold those local ISD boards very much accountable. As far as healthcare costs goes, I own a small practice. I have clients. I have about 1,200 clients, and the majority of those are employers. They defer raises now to just try to stay up with basic healthcare costs. And it's a sad statement of where we're at, but it's not unique to teachers. It is universally bankrupting our local governments, our state governments, our federal government, and then every private sector and individual in between. So that's a big, broad issue that needs to be addressed, but nobody can seem to find the answer to it just yet. But I encourage you guys to get involved as much as you are here, because truth of the matter is I watch my local ISD budget hearings and board meetings and things that go on, and they're all good people trying to fix a big problem too. I see all y'all here when I very seldom see anybody on a local district engaged in that. So it's just an observation. So
I'm with Education Austin. I'm on our executive board. So we are very closely involved in looking at budget in our local district and are kept informed about budget, participate in the process through consultation.
And I would say it this way, not so much an association representation, which is important to have, is every individual teacher that teaches in a classroom. That's where your impact, as Senator Whitmire said, the testimony really matters. And I think that's where you can change, you can garner public support at the local level for those issues that we're all trying to fix.
Senator Whitmire.
Senator Perry, I'm sure you're not shocked to learn, or you probably know, in some jurisdictions, some districts, it would be really frowned upon. And there's political pressure on employees, primarily teachers, not to confront the administration in public. So factor that in. And then number two, if you're driving an Uber car after work, it's damn hard to get back to the board meeting too. So, so you know, I hear you, and I applaud the ladies and the witnesses being here, but back home sometimes it's a little different political climate, and also the difficulty of getting there if you've got young children at home and you're doing the second and third job, such as the Uber driver.
And Senator Whitmire, I 100% agree.
Senator Perry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I 100% agree, but I think that highlights the reason this money is being targeted directly to the classroom. Sure. And so what the message ought to be clear is we want our teachers to get paid. We don't want district shenanigans going in the middle of it. And we want to empower teachers that if they can come to the state and ask for help, and we find a way to make it, that they should have the same privilege at that local level without fear of retaliation or anything that goes into it. Because I hear that from my teachers. You didn't just say something that's news to anybody. I hear teachers tell me behind closed doors every time we have this conversation that they don't feel comfortable challenging the system to make their classroom better, and that shouldn't be the case.
I concur with your remarks, and I will close by saying, first of all, I'm going to be shocked if the school boards don't support this raise. And I had some work I had planned to do before noon in the office, but I heard the school boards are going to be here later, and through the grapevine I heard they're going to oppose it. So I don't want to be anywhere but right here when they testify, if that's the case. Number two, I would also advise the witnesses, you've got to know who your state rep and state senator is. I mean, that is shocking sometimes when people back home will be talking about a school board action or lack of action. And if there's any intimidation ever, you need to call your rep and your senator. And then also, to continue this energy level that you're feeling from the panel, you need to make certain that everyone, the groups, the organizations, but individual teachers, about who their rep and who their senator is, because it does make a difference. Thank you.
Ms. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Christy Rome, and I'm here testifying on behalf of the Texas School Coalition on Senate Bill 3. And we 100% agree that our teachers deserve a raise. They need a raise. And we just believe that this is perhaps not the best way to go about it, this one-size-fits-all nature of the plan. Our preference would be that districts receive both the resources and the flexibility to apply to the values of their community, because in some communities that might be hiring additional classroom teachers to reduce class sizes. In other communities that might be providing an incentive for a gifted educator to move from one campus to another by providing them even more than the $5,000. And others, it might be recruiting personnel such as bilingual teachers. All of these are needs that different communities may have, also including hiring or we're paying counselors more. We've talked a lot in this committee. I've heard you all talk about the mental health concerns at our campuses. The amount provided to districts to pay for this increase in salary, thank you very much for including the state contribution to TRS. What's not included right now is the other benefits. You heard Commissioner Morath speak to the 4.2%, and in some districts that pay Social Security even more than that. So just another consideration as we are working through the funding that's available to schools. Again, in this big picture process, we understand that there's another bill coming. It's critical to maintain that this revenue is sustainable into the future. Madam Chair, you talked about the last time that pay raise was given was 10 years ago. And 2 years after that, the state had to make dramatic cuts to funding that resulted in reductions in force of teachers. So what we don't want to see happen is that this pay raise, which is now given a floor, resulting in the firing of teachers in years to come when a downturn happens. We want to be able to take care of our teachers in the next 2 years and the years to come. So thank you for your desire to pay hardworking Texas educators more. We share that with you, absolutely, and we look forward to working with you as this bill moves through the process.
Ms. Roan, I thought I knew who the Texas School Coalition is, but I'm confused now. You want to break it down for me? Who is the coalition?
The Texas School Coalition represents districts that pay Robin Hood recapture. They're Chapter 41 districts.
Okay, so you actually have a coalition made up of school districts and administrations, not a parental, not a parent group.
No, sir, we are an organization.
You're a professional group of primarily school administrators.
Administrators and trustees, the school districts are
And so you're testifying on the bill?
Yes, sir.
You haven't heard the previous testimony and the ladies with you that how critical their needs are, the teachers?
Yes, sir, those needs are critical.
I mean, so you don't have to drive an Uber, or the lady that had the husband that works at a pharmacy at 10:30. I mean, that doesn't shock you? Or you already know it and still want to testify on the bill?
We know it and want to pay our teachers more.
But you're not going to do it if you don't support this bill. This bill is the best vehicle available, as we talked today, to increase at least $5,000. And we could badly need your support. The teachers need your support.
We support the increased funding for our teachers.
But you testify on the bill.
Yes, sir. We don't agree with the across-the-board nature of the bill.
I'm disappointed, and I bet they are too. You know, you got a heck of a morale problem, I'm sure you're aware. And it's bound to show up in the classroom. You know, if you're struggling like the testimony we've heard today, it's got to be impacting the classroom environment. So I wish y'all would reconsider and get behind this bill. And I bet I speak for a lot of my colleagues.
You finished, Senator Woodland?
No, I'm through.
Senator Bentoncourt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Christie, let me expound on the dean's comments here. You're testifying on, which means you're not for or against. Now, however, you spent a year watching the Commission on Public School Finance, okay? And Senator Taylor has a bill that is coming. Clearly, the evidence we saw over the whole year was that putting the best teachers in the worst classroom gets the best results. Am I missing that paraphrase?
We agree, putting the best teachers in the classrooms where they need most is important.
Okay, so I guess if you agree with that, so why not testify in favor of the bill?
Because I believe exactly the point that you're making there, that putting the best teacher in the classroom that needs them most is not something that is allowed under a bill that is across the board in nature. We would like to see local districts have the flexibility to develop plans that do exactly that, that would encourage a teacher who has gifts that might want to pursue that higher salary by teaching inside their profession and not having to drive an Uber, by going to a campus that may need them more and need those gifts more with their students.
So, Christie, is the point performance-based pay? Is that what you're advocating for?
I'm not advocating for that in particular. I'm advocating for a district being able to address pay at the district level in a way that meets the needs of their community. Because not every community, some communities, like Senator Perry's district, don't have multiple campuses to recruit teachers to. They need to be able to take care of the teachers on the one campus that they have. So it's a matter of local flexibility that's needed.
Okay, and I'm still trying to understand okay, because you know that Senator Taylor has a bill that's coming along with Chairman Huberty, and there's been significant discussion of a variety of reforms. So why not, I still don't understand why we're not supporting what is clearly the number one issue identified after 1 year of taking testimony, that having the teacher in the classroom compensated effectively is not the number one issue that you see. You're not going to testify for it.
Well, I understand what's been said about that there is not a this or that with the two bills. But Madam Chair, you also mentioned that there is still a limited amount of dollars. And so we're now talking about $4 billion of the $6 billion additional extra that you have provided in the base budget so far. So the concern is that if this is how the additional resources are coming to districts, we want to ensure that we can meet the needs in every community in a very diverse state.
And Christy, I would say that I'm disappointed about the on, because my grandmother told me long ago that you get more flies with sugar than you do vinegar, okay? So if you see something here, okay, that the Chapter 41 schools are opposed to, but right now, with the way a Chapter 41 school works, the only way we can get this money to these teachers is to blast through and get it to them directly, because we've already heard enough discussion of Robin Hood and school finance. So I guess I fundamentally, I don't understand the on, because without additional resources that cuts through Robin Hood, you can't get this money to them. Am I missing something here? Or?
If you will reduce recapture in the districts that I represent, we absolutely want to put that money towards our teachers. That's what we would do with the funding. We just may not do it across the board. And some districts would, but to give the districts the ability to represent the values and priorities of their community.
Well, I mean, no one has been railing against recapture for longer, because I started that committee hearing a year ago by saying we have to we have to reduce our reliance on recapture. We have to wean off of Robin Hood somehow. So I guess what I'm trying to find out is, why the on? Why not just say yes and say, here's some things we want to look at. But right now, unless the law changes, unless we just literally take this hot knife and stick it right through, school refinance, there's no way for these teachers to get the money in a Chapter 41's district. So I guess that's what I'm puzzled by, because you can't, unless we lock it down like we're trying to do, if nothing else changed, okay, in the school code, that money would not end up with them. Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to understand is, why not say yes?
If the money comes to the district and the district has increased resources, the very first priority is to provide that funding to the teachers.
Okay, well then again, if the very first priority is, why not say yes now?
You might be heard better later.
Well, that was my grandmother's story, but now I've got the dean basically telling you the truth. Okay, all right. Okay, so.
And that is certainly why we are not against this bill, because we would never be against a teacher pay raise. That's something we want to see, is an increase in pay for our teachers.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back to the dean.
No, thank you. I mean, I wouldn't belabor the point, but I am I don't understand who's your constituents? I mean, let's go back to the coalition, because I don't want to shoot the messenger. I assume, although you sound like you believe what you're saying, your passion for your testimony. But I'm trying to understand who would have you come here and not be for something that every member of finance is for. I would be shocked if it doesn't pass the Senate 31-0. So just from a sheer effectiveness. So you could express your concerns, which would be heard, and you could have a place at the table, but not when you come up here and in the face of the outcry and the hardship that we've documented this morning, not be for your teachers. So how do you form your opinion? Do you have a committee? Do you have a membership vote, or what? I want to know who's really responsible. I'm giving you a little bit of a pass, although your passion for your testimony is pretty striking.
Well, and I'll say I am a former classroom teacher.
Well,
so I am very passionate about this issue overall.
You ought to be saying on your own personal experience that you're for the bill. You know how easy it would have been for y'all to be for the bill and then say, but we have some concerns, and you would have a place at the table? But you're voting, you're on the bill in the face of 16 members of the Senate that are doing the right thing, and I'm assuming when we get to the Senate, it'll probably be 31-0. And y'all are not smart enough. I'll just get down to direct. Smart enough to be for the bill.
Witness entitled to her own opinion.
Sure she is, and I'm entitled to my question and answers. But it's just shocking. It is. And I'm disappointed. I would ask you to go back and reconsider.
Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And one of the concerns we have is really to get the teachers in the classroom the money. And this has been one of the discussions. We talked about the merit pay and now this across-the-board pay raise. TAS actually had given us some information showing a lot of different things, the average teacher base pay. And so we added that. We asked TA, and they gave us the average superintendent pay. And this is from 2009 to 2019. And you might be interested to know that during that period of time, the average teacher pay went up 11.6%, and the average superintendent pay went up 30%. So I think you see why we're trying to get this money to the classroom and not just leave it to the discretion of the district, because we keep hearing these stories and we see a lot of other things going on in education. And we're working on a lot of things. So those of you on the superintendent side, we're going to have some more money in this bill to provide a lot of these things. But at the same time, we want to make sure that our teachers, this is our talent pool that we're trying to fill our teaching positions with and retain the teachers that we have. And some of that does involve pay. We know there's some other issues out there, the discipline issues, the bookkeeping, those types of things. But pay is a significant part of the talent pool. When you talk to these kids and the teachers are recommending or not their child goes into teaching, a lot of it's pay. And so we're trying to address it. And that's why this particular bill is going to direct the money to teachers in the classroom. Because we know what happens. And there's always a lot of needs. You see just like what we see at the state level, and that money will get diluted because there's some other need somewhere else. And meanwhile, we'll have teachers who are not getting the pay that we need them to have to keep that talent pool up, to make sure our future is protected. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Taylor, and thank you all for your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next panel, please come up to the witness desk. And the next panel, please come up to the front row. Lori Coletti, Lessa Pritchard, Chandra Villanueva, and we have El Rodriguez. Al Rodriguez, please come up to the front row, and he'll be against. We'll start with you. Please identify yourself, who you represent, and then you may proceed.
Good morning, Senator.
Hey everyone, this is Bobby Blanchard with Texas Tribune. We're going to end this stream on our social media. Watching it, you can online at the Taylor's website. I will drop a link in the comments on Facebook if you want to keep watching it there. But we're going to end this stream shortly here. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Teacher raises. We just want you all to